Good evening. It is 6 p.m. and we will call the regular meeting of the Town of Florence Planning and Zoning Commission to order on Thursday, March 21st. Maricela, would you please do roll call?
Commissioner Lehman?
Here.
Commissioner Capolongo?
Present.
Commissioner Pro?
Present.
Vice Chair Adam?
Present.
Chair Frost?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. If you'd all please rise, I've asked Vice Chair Adam to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we started that process, and I failed to recognize that we have a new commissioner up on the dais with us this evening. Mr. Lehman, welcome aboard.
I can figure out how to do all this. Thank you. It's way too high up here, by the way.
And we appreciate the longtime service of prior Commissioner Vanderstar, who was diligent in his efforts to be here with us all the time. Agenda item number 4 is call to the public. And some of you might be here to comment on the agenda item regarding Florence 287. If you are here to comment on that, please do so during the call to the public. Call to the public for a public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Individual commission members may respond to criticisms made, may ask staff to review a matter raised, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the commission shall not discuss or take action on any matter during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. And with that, if there's anyone that would like to speak to us, Marty, is there anyone online that we need to recognize this evening?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll take the audience members first. Anyone that would like to address the commission, please come forward and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
3 minutes is not going to take me long. I request that you adjourn this meeting for illegal actions by the 3 of you. It's a violation of the open meeting law, that all 3 of you violated the open meeting law by going behind that curtain. And so anything you do tonight is going to be subject to that. Thank you. And I will be contacting the town attorney and the county attorney's office on that also.
And is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening from the audience? Please come forward.
You're not going to adjourn this?
No, sir, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, please state your name. Okay.
Jasmine Lopez. Okay, so we're talking about Project 287. Okay, sorry, I got distracted for 2 seconds. I'm not good at this. Okay, so I have a ranch off of Hiscox Road, 2.5 acres, fighting for traditions and amongst other things. But if we are going to have to be forced to be neighbors, I would like to see road plans that does not involve what I'm calling to the make-believe highway, because we haven't even broke ground for that yet. So, because right now I have 3 canal roads I can take to get behind my property in case of livestock issues, or if we're building a new enclosure, we just have access to all sides of my property through a canal road, because we also have irrigation rights. So if we're going to, I just want to see an outline of that. I know we probably don't have that right now, but I do want to just bring that to a certain degree of attention. It's on I think my land's, it's on phase 5, but something along that era without the make-believe highway. And also first aid responders Are we gonna place more out there, or are we gonna rely to the ones here in town? If we can clarify that safety issue as well, as in police department, fire department. I think that's all for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to summarize your question so that we understand it, one was to make sure that your access along the canal roads are maintained.
No, I don't need them maintained. I just need to know if they're going to still be there.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
That was
Okay.
my,
Okay.
yeah, okay, they'll still be there. And the second question was emergency response.
Yes. One more thing I did forget. So we have a huge colony of barrel owls. They barrel into the ground. I reached out to Game and Fish, and they have not been asked to go out there to do a survey. Is that something we can look into here, or is that something I need to bring attention elsewhere? But if we can look into those owls too, that'd be great. They are protected. I'd like to keep them that way. Those are my concerns, and I'll leave the rest to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I bet the applicant would be able to help you on
I believe so.
with the access along the canal roads.
Yeah.
Staff will ask staff to respond to you on emergency access. And then I think staff would probably be the ones that would be contacting Game and Fish as well, now that they know about the burrowing owls.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Anyone else in the audience? And Maricel, would you please?
All right, Courtney, you are on.
Thank you, Commissioners. So I have a few things, maybe our liaisons or y'all can take some notes and answer some questions. I understand that the rules were changed recently, so this project the PUD hasn't even been approved by council yet. I guess that's going before them next month on the 1st. But these new rules changed, I guess, and allowed preliminary plats to go through you guys before they go to council. That verbiage in that meeting really didn't state that nature, but anyway, here we are trying to put the cart before the horse, trying to approve preliminary plats before the PUD is actually approved, which, by the way, you guys can choose to just table this until all that's worked out. Which is probably best. We also know that our roads are a mess. This project is going to bring about 4,500 units. 1,145 lots, which is probably going to be about 4,580 people and cars. This project abuts the disastrous Centennial Park, right, where D.R. Horton's currently building in 287. There's no stoplights. It looks like there's going to be 3 accesses to 287. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Again, why are we voting for all this crazy-ass high-density housing when our infrastructure cannot handle it? Again, you guys can vote to continue until all this is taken care of and major answers are questioned for the health and safety of those of us that are already here. What about all the roads? Again, right, roads are a major concern. This developer should be putting money into the funding to do both sides of Hiscox, both sides of 287, et cetera, et cetera. It should not be left to the taxpayers at all. These developments should pay for themselves, period. I am as a taxpayer and sick and tired of having my money go to support infrastructure when these guys should be doing it. What about impact fees and when are they paid on projects like this? Have any development agreements been done yet? I oppose this project right now because it's butting up right against Centennial and 287. We need stoplights as it is. Florence is in trouble, y'all, and not many of us are happy about what's coming our way with all this high-density housing. It's a nightmare waiting to happen. We're concerned for our safety.
Excuse me, Chair, can I just ask a process issue? Can we get the closed caption up? It's hard for me to hear
Yeah,
everything.
it's real hard.
Is that possible?
I'm happy to repeat if need be.
Okay.
So can we get the closed caption, Chris?
Yeah, I got it. It's
Okay,
going up
thank
now.
you.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's very hard to hear on the line.
Thank you,
Do I need to repeat myself?
No, you have been caught on record. Okay, next. Ms. Cox, you're up now.
She's muted.
Oh. We can hear you, Ms. Cox.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners.
But hold on just a second. Would you please reset the timer? I want to give you your full 3 minutes. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We definitely need to work on the roads, evacuations, first aid. What if there was a catastrophe that all these people have to evacuate their homes? Where are they going to go? What's the routes? This will impact the town. Are they going to head into town? We need to work on that. That's about all I have to say for this session right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Agreed.
And is
That's all online. Yep, please, we'll recognize.
So, in answer to the first speaker's concern, we were not discussing anything board-related. I was giving these two gentlemen a heads up because I had not spoken to them before. I planned on doing this at call to council or call to committee, but I'm doing it now. Early in my tenure on planning and zoning, I was still somewhat the new guy. The former chair was unceremoniously ousted from the commission. No explanation was given to us, and we were asked to then vote on that matter. While I felt it arbitrary and unwarranted, given my short time serving, I held my tongue. I voiced my opinion and voted no, but otherwise went along as I felt my then inexperience didn't entitle me to speak further. I'm no longer the new guy. Recently, the commissioners whose terms expired at the end of last year were required to interview again for our positions. While I felt that was somewhat ridiculous, I agreed to it as I was told it was town code. It's been my understanding that up until recently, boards and commissions in town were often difficult to fully staff, not enough people interested in serving. Seeing how commissioners are treated now, I'd be surprised if anyone without an agenda or ulterior motive volunteers to serve in the future. A commissioner who'd served faithfully, dutifully, and conscientiously was re-interviewed for reappointment, and then, in an act of what can only be described as sheer disrespect, asked to step down and become first alternate. To his credit, he refused. The current members of this commission had spoken against any changes to the current makeup of planning and zoning, and are on record many times praising the way we've worked together during our time serving. As they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It would seem the powers that be feel if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. The disrespect shown by this arbitrary removal also highlights the lack of regard for a group of people who serve voluntarily, all trying to do the right thing. This shows that it's a waste of time and effort. I detest having my time wasted. Actions have consequences. The consequence of this inane removal is that effective immediately, I hereby tender my resignation from the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Florence. So long, everybody.
Thank you. He's been a great commissioner. We're sorry to see him go. And we still have a quorum, correct, Maricela, so we can continue on, okay?
Correct.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion/approval/disapproval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 7th, 2004. 2024, excuse me. And with that, any discussion?
I think,
Amendments?
Chair, I'm sorry, I think I'm missing a page. Do you have the complete minutes there?
Not the minutes.
Maricela, are the minutes 2 pages?
Yes, it was only a 19-minute meeting, so it's only
Really short.
2 pages.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay,
Yep,
thank
just
you.
2
I'm sorry.
pages. I reviewed them and everything looks accurate. And with that, I will make a motion for approval of the minutes from March 7th, 2024 as written.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I made the motion and Commissioner Pro seconded that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we have 4 ayes on that one, Maricela, unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
New business. Presentation, approval with conditions or denial of a preliminary plat for the planned unit development known as Florence 287. This is PZ-24-46. Maricela, do you have staff presentation?
I have a short presentation, then I'll hand it over to the representatives for their full presentation. Chair, members of the commission, this first item is the Florence 287 preliminary plat. It was submitted at the same time as the PUD. We did not bring it to the commission until it was starting to go through its processes with council. This policy that things can be submitted concurrently has been in place for years. It's just been years since something like this has actually happened. Saying that, tonight, with the new code amendment going into effect as of yesterday, the preliminary plats are required to go through Planning and Zoning Commission and then go to Town Council. Now, this pre-plat has a stipulation that it will not be fully approved until the PUD is adopted. And if it does not get adopted, then the preliminary plat also does not get approved. With that being said, going through some of the basics, Florence 287 as a whole spans across Florence and Coolidge in a 2,249 acre project. However, only 1,595 acres are actually part of the town of Florence. In specific to this pre-plat, there's only a gross area of 328.05 acres being platted. Recommendations here, or if we'll go to town council, due to those new code amendments. And if anything else in between happens, then we can move on from there as well. With that, I will ask our representatives from Langley to come up and give their presentation. There we go. Thanks. And you can use this clicker to go.
Okay, yeah, I will do that part.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Vice Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Jennifer Ruby, Langley Properties, address is 2738 East Guadalupe Road, Gilbert, Arizona, 85234. Thank you for having us back again. You all are already familiar with this PUD, so we won't repeat the overall concept. You've just seen it recently. I do want to address a couple things that were mentioned in the call to the public, because they have been confusing issues throughout not only the P&Z hearings, but also the council session that we had Monday night. So as to public safety, we want to be absolutely clear in the PUD. Now, please understand, I'm not speaking about the preliminary plat right now necessarily, but in the PUD, we are absolutely stipulated, conditioned to a public safety facility. Presumably that will be a fire station with possibly a police substation in that. Not only is it in our narrative, we are stipulated to it. You all already know this. It was your stipulation. So I just want to be real clear. It's not on any of our maps because public safety doesn't have a future plan yet for this area. So they don't know where it will be. If and when they're ready to make a designation, we are absolutely ready and willing to make that dedication. So just to clear up any confusion, because there was a lot of back and forth on that specific issue, and it's so important. We want a fire station. This community is big enough, we're far enough away, it's appropriate. So just to clear that up. The other thing I wanted to mention as to the burrowing owls, because I do have quite a bit of development experience, that's absolutely standard over the course of development. There will be a survey done. As I was sitting there, I was trying to remember, I think I've had 5 projects where we've relocated burrowing owls. There's a company in the valley called Wild at Heart. They're the experts, they're nationally recognized, they travel around the country to do these relocations. So they would be part of that process. Again, I have no reason to doubt there are burrowing owls. Of course there are, there always are in farm fields like this. So that's absolutely part of the process. Just not right now, because if we did it right now, by the time the project got developed, the owls would repopulate. So you do that right prior to development. So just a couple of those issues we wanted to clear up. Again, the preliminary plat tonight, doing a preliminary plat concurrently, I understand it causes a little bit of confusion. I'm sure you all are familiar with this. One of the things it does is give the town some certainty that the PUD is functional. So we're effectively proving up the PUD, and we're able to say, hey, we asked you for these big bubbles with densities and unit counts. This is what it looks like. This is what the first 1,100 look like. You see the lots, you see the streets, you see the landscaping plans, you can see everything. So I actually think it's a helpful function for the town or for the governing jurisdiction to be able to see both of those, if not exactly concurrently, at least in close proximity. Again, for the record, we completely understand that should our zoning not be approved, the preliminary plat is for naught. It's not approved until the zoning is approved. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rob to do a brief presentation, more technical. We're here if you have any questions, as always. Thank you all so much for your time.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Rob Goopser with Hilgart Wilson, 2141 East Highland. We are handling the planning and engineering for this project, and grateful to be here and part of this project on behalf of Comena Group and Langley Properties. Thanks. Okay. So real quick, just want to give a quick update. Obviously, we've been before you last month for the 287 PUD. Just kind of a refresher for you. We were just in front of council on Monday night for our first read before public hearing. And for just a refresher for you, that PUD is approximately 1,500, almost 1,600 acres that's located within Florence. There's about 700 acres that are south of the project that we have started a master plan as part of this overall community that's in Coolidge, but that's not part of the PUD that's moving before council right now. The PUD that we did put together was clearly based off of the town's general plan, the 3 land use categories that are prevalent within our project. Thank you. Are prevalent in our project are the suburban neighborhood, the highway mixed use, and the innovation district. Using those 3 districts, we've clearly outlined and designed this project to meet those underlying land use categories. We looked at the densities that were allocated within those 3 categories and made sure that our development units and our plan itself met those underlying categories. And with that led to just over 7,500 units that we've planned for this project. That includes the suburban neighborhood, so largely it's going to be single-family residential, and then there's also some additional areas that could be single-family attached, could be multifamily, could be mixed use. Those are going to be the areas that are highlighted, a little bit of the darker brown areas as well as the pink areas, more so along the heavily traveled corridors. Overall, with 7,500 units on 1,600 acres, we're about 4.7 dwelling units per acre. That is obviously going to be a lot less when we're looking at the single-family detached, which will be part of the project that I'll be talking about here shortly. And just also a reference to that we've identified areas for commercial and employment uses, again along 287, also looking at the future north-south freeway corridor where we've identified areas for employment uses along that corridor as well. Throughout our project, we've looked at linking this heavily with pedestrian corridors, looking to access areas where we can set up trails as well as combining those with sidewalks and trail connections throughout. So let me go ahead and jump into the actual project. Technical difficulties. All right. The first part that we're looking at, and it's part of the subject preliminary plat this evening, is for Development Unit 1. Overall, it's about 450 acres. It includes the area that you see identified and kind of laid out in the project area right there. It's just a little bit, kind of a few parcels north of 287, as well as parcels that are either side of Plant Road, south of 287. Kind of blocked in with Mayfield alignment to the west and the Florence Canal to the east. Overall, for the 450 acres, we're proposing about 2,400 residential units. Again, that can be in single-family attached, which is primarily for the preliminary plat itself, as well as a single-family attached product, and as well as multifamily. The single-family attached and multifamily are not part of the single-family preliminary plat, but I wanted to identify those areas and just give you an understanding of what's forthcoming. There's also the opportunity that we included supporting business and commerce uses north side of 287 on either side of Plant Road, and they're identified as parcels 31 and 32. For the areas that we're looking at as single-family detached, it's approximately 330 acres of the overall site. We're looking at about 1,150, I think we're about 1,145, I think is in the preliminary plat, which equates to about 3.5 dwelling units per acre. That is less than the 4.0 dwelling units per acre that's identified within the suburban neighborhood category for the underlying general plan, and that's also less than what we had indicated within our 287 PUD. So we're actually coming in a little bit less now that we've actually started to site plan this and include all the open space and amenities that have been required. For this preliminary plat area, we've got 4 lot sizes. We're looking at 45 by 115s, 50 by 120s, 55 by 120, and 65 by 125. So again, a very diverse mix of single-family units that are proposed for this area. And then also, as we move forward with this preliminary plat, we are looking forward to jumping into final plats once the PUD is approved, as well as the preliminary plat for Development Unit 1. We're looking at an initial final plat for 400 units, and that area would be kind of southeast of 287 and Plant Road. That would include areas 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. So again, a good mix of units within that first final plat that we're proposing. The one thing I would like to note on this project is there's a lot of physical encumbrances and constraints that we've had to work through with the design aspect of this. We've got 287 that kind of comes through at a diagonal. We have Florence Canal with its curvilinear layout. We've got a power line corridor that traverses along the southern boundary of this Development Unit 1. So a lot of encumbrances that we've had to work through as we start to lay out this project, which from a planning aspect, I think actually helps, because what it does is allow us to get a little bit more detailed and add a little bit more flair is not the right word, but make curvilinear designs, and it's not all straight streets or rectilinear designs. So we've had the opportunity to work within the constraints that we have established and create these, I think, a very an enjoyable community, one that when you come in and you're not just driving down a straight street. It allows the opportunity for more areas of open space, pockets of open space, as well as, and I'll show here in a little bit, but allows some diversity in kind of that streetscape, where it allows us to articulate some of the the walls and kind of push those back and introduce a little bit more open space, create more buffers, which I think was, if I recall correctly, was an issue that was discussed when we were bringing the PUD for informational session originally. So in terms of kind of the entry monumentation, we're looking at an opportunity here for, I think, pulling on some of the agrarian feel, the theme that is part of the existing context of the project itself right now. I think it's got a kind of a modern look to it, but still, again, kind of honing in on the roots of the site itself. As you can see in the upper left corner, that's the entry monument. It's got corrugated metal roof. It's got a rain chain, so we can look at maybe doing some sustainability elements in terms of rainwater capture. Another item too is this resista, and it's a wood composite. It's an opportunity to utilize a sustainable product on this instead of having to go out and maintain and try to maintain this wood, an actual wood product with the composite cladding. It actually is a sustainable product that's using rice product and mineral oil and salt. So it's, again, something that will help create more of a sustainable vibe on this entry. The other thing we're looking at is board form concrete and introducing some stone veneer as well for the entry monument. Over on the right side are some of the imagery of the walls. We're looking at, and that's where we're including some of the stone veneer, various types of scored or CMU walls, CMU block, as well as a concrete split rail fence. So instead of using a wood fence that we'd have to maintain or may collapse after a couple years of weatherization, the concrete will help support itself and have a longer lifespan. And then for areas that we would need to have view fencing, we'll introduce wrought iron fencing as well. I wanted to take an opportunity to just show a few of the typical areas that we would identify for open space. These are just a few kind of excerpts from the landscape plans themselves. Just two typical parks that we're showing. I think we've got a really robust setup of amenities, something that we don't typically see in a lot of the communities. I like the fact that we're introducing kind of a ping pong tables, bag toss, a half-court basketball, climbing boulders for the kids. And if we look at what's in the packet, and I didn't include it in the presentation, but in the back of the packet, there's some really interesting climbing features for the kids, the toys. It's not a typical standard tot lot, but something that's a little bit more robust and more fun for the kids. I know my kids would love it, and I probably would too if I was out there playing with them. But again, fun areas, play structures, shaded seating areas, picnic benches as well. So highly amenitized throughout the development unit 1. The typical areas that we're identifying for open space and amenities range anywhere from a half acre to about 2 to 3 acres in size. The other thing too is to point out is a lot of the open space areas are interconnected throughout, again, trying to play on the pedestrian connectivity throughout, making sure that it's easy to get to one of these open space areas. If you see it, hopefully you're going to be able to jump on either a trail or a sidewalk to easily access that open space area. I want to just show a couple of the street sections. These are right out of the PUD application and the PUD itself. This is on the top is the principal arterial for 287, which will be a 6-lane roadway, 3 in each direction, plus a bike lane, as well as detached sidewalks. The south image is what would be the modified principal arterial for Plant Road. This is the ultimate cross section. This is 120-foot right-of-way, and what we're planning on for the initial stages of Plant Road would be a 2-lane roadway in each direction with a widened median. If there's a point in time where it's ever determined through warrant that there would need to be a 3rd lane in each direction, we would then take that, working with the town, that would be developed internal to the median, so the median would shrink a little bit as they needed to add that 3rd lane. But as of right now, working with the town through the approved circulation master plan, as well as the traffic impact analysis, right now it's not warranted that we would need 3 lanes in either direction. Getting a little bit more into the development itself in terms of the collector sections, the major collector on the upper image, 80-foot right-of-way, 1 lane in either direction, plus bike lanes, detached multi-use path, 10-foot multi-use path on either side. And then we've got the PUE, and as we discussed at the Planning Commission meetings for the PUD, the trees are actually set outside of the PUE. Lower left, minor collector, very similar, just without the median. And then on the lower right is the local road, so the internal street network, 5-foot sidewalks, lane in either direction, typical for a local street section. The one thing I did want to touch on, I mentioned earlier, but I think this is to come back to a question that was asked during one of our initial Planning Commission meetings on the PUD, was looking at what the streetscape looks like and what's that feel along 287 as well as Plant Road. So I took a couple images, stitched them together, and added some dimensions on here to show you what that would look like as you're traveling down 287 in terms of the street frontage. And with some of the curvilinear design and the encumbrances and constraints that we've got to work around, it allows us to move some of these streets and add a little bit more angular and some articulation in the walls, and especially along the street frontages. So just some of the narrowest places along 287, the image you see is primarily west of Plant Road. We've got about a 30-foot is the narrowest point of the buffer. You step back with a 5-foot articulation on the rear walls. We've got 35 feet, and that's just the narrowest areas. As you can see, they continue to articulate and create a little bit more of a buffer as you head further to the west. And then as you go through and head down Plant Road, as you come into the community, there's an area that's 30-foot buffer, 35-foot wide buffer, but then it expands on the other side to 43 at the tightest point, up to 68. So again, it's a nice feel as you're coming and entering the community, or if you're driving along 287, you don't have just a straight stretch of wall. You have that articulation, you have a nice soft buffer. This is just kind of the same imagery, just heading a little bit further to the east towards the northeast portion of the project, the community. As you can see, 50, 55 feet, 53 feet. So a lot of articulation continuing along that frontage as well too. So I think it lends itself to, again, a very nice streetscape along 287 and entering into the community. So with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you this evening on this preliminary plat, and again, happy to entertain any questions.
Great. Before you leave the dais, tell me one more time how to say your last name.
Goopser.
Very good. Commission members, any questions or concerns to bring up this evening? Okay, Mr. Lehman, please.
Turn my mic on here. I have to learn how the procedure works here. Okay. In this area, we are talking tonight only about Unit 1. There are multiple, 8 to 12 units in the whole development. So we're just talking about the first part that you will develop originally. And these are all single-family homes that you've proposed tonight?
Commissioner Lehman, yes, that is correct. We are looking at just Development Unit 1, and the preliminary plat is just focused on single-family detached residential. But
Okay.
it's also setting aside those parcels that will be planned for attached or commercial later on.
So we're not talking about any duplexes or condos or things like, or apartment houses at this point in time?
Commissioner Lehman, no. We are just talking
All
about
right, I
single-family
just want to make
detached.
sure we're not doing high-density housing right now.
We are not doing high-density housing, and I
Used
think
a few times around the meeting, so.
I think we're coming in about 3.5 dwellings to the acre.
Okay. The nearest elementary school is where?
It's a good question. I wish I had more of a context map. I don't have a context. Do you have a context map?
Is it the green spot?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lehman, the nearest one that I'm aware of is on Park Street down in the downtown area.
It's the downtown one?
Right.
Okay. I just want to make sure you're not allowing for any school site in this development. Is that correct?
Commissioner Lehman, sorry I couldn't zoom out. I was going to show that, but we have, not part of this development unit, but as part of the PUD, we have identified a potential school site that we're still working with the school district on, but it hasn't been defined whether, elementary or if it's even needed at this point. So.
Okay. I know Florence may be going to junior highs soon too. We'll see what happens there. And I know we already talked about fire and police area left over, so that's fine. I won't talk about that. I'm just curious, what is active play turf?
Commissioner Lehman, good question. Active play turf is that turf where you can go out there, throw a frisbee, throw a ball, walk your dog through, that type of turf.
Okay, so that's not seasonality like rye or Bermuda, right?
It has not been defined at this point, but I would defer to the HOA when they develop it if they're going to overseed it at a point in time.
Okay. I just like to get these questions out there for the future. I feel like we have some responsibility for future generations and what they'll have out there. So, all the surfaces are defined except what's under the ping pong tables, whether that's concrete or is that sponge type rubber surface or what. So, I think that needs to be defined a little bit more too. I don't know if I didn't find it anywhere that I could see. Also, under the playground equipment for the kids, you show wood fiber safety surface. I assume that's bark and shredded bark and things of that sort, right?
Commissioner Lehman, that is correct, yes.
Okay, so that's a mess to take care of when the weeds start growing. I know because I used to take care of my HOAs all the time. So that may not be the best thing, but those rubber things aren't even better because the kids will take them home in their pockets, and we don't need that either. Also, all these park areas that are shown in the various plats, these are all secondary water retention.
Commissioner Lehman, that is correct. They're typically retention basins that we will develop. There will be an area that will be high and dry, such as the park facility, the seating areas. Those areas will be up and outside of the retention basin, but on the lower end of the retention basin will be the turf at that point. So that's the area we're going to go throw the ball around or play frisbee.
Okay. I did not notice any dog parks in here. Are you planning on any of those?
Commissioner Lehman, at this point, we have not identified an area that would be a dog park.
Okay. I will commend you on using concrete rails rather than wood, because they will last longer. I know that's a long-term concern for us here in the desert. Another comment I might make is on some of the children's play areas, you show a turf tunnel. I would not recommend we have a turf tunnel. That's just an invite for some critters to get in there, and when a kid goes crawling in there, they're going to be in contact with it. So that's not something I would be pushing in the play areas for the kids. I think that's the biggest issues I have, other than you do not show anywhere here the road modification for Plant Road at 287. Let me back up just a minute. Up in the northeast corner, we have just installed, I shouldn't say we, but we, the citizens of Arizona, have just installed a nice four-way intersection. I know your plan was probably put together before that intersection was put in there at Centennial on 287, but it would be nice if we could access that through here. That's probably not in your major plans. I hate to change it around, but I want people to aware that we spend a lot of time and effort, and that's a corner that will probably get a light at some point too. And I would expect that your Plant Road and 287 will have a light too, and it needs turning lanes and things of that sort. Are you talking to ADOT about these things?
Commissioner Lehman, yes, we are working with ADOT closely. Our traffic engineer has been in contact, as well as ourselves, making sure that we address any concerns that they do have on 287. And to your comment, yes, we do anticipate Plant Road will have an intersection at 280 or a signal at 287.
Okay. Also at Mayfield and near 24th Street, I assume that's going to be another major intersection for access in here?
Commissioner Lehman, yes, that will be one of the other major intersections.
Okay, what are you doing on the secondary ones that come into Unit 1 and Unit, I guess it would be Unit 6? Are you going to do anything special about those turn lanes, or are we just going to have high-speed cars try to turn in and out at that spot?
No, that's a good question, Commissioner Lehman. Yes, we anticipate that there will be obviously decel lanes to make sure that we're not trying to take a right turn into the development from a high-speed lane.
Okay, and extension of Plant Road to the north, you show the business commerce area up there along with the multifamily. Is that the only access into this business commerce, or will you plan on having ingress and egress from those business onto 287?
Commissioner Lehman, that's a good question. Obviously, we're concerned about points of access and number of access points onto 287. At this point, those areas haven't been site planned. Would work with whoever the ultimate user is to understand what their needs are for access, and then work with ADOT at that time. I do anticipate that there may be a need for access, but then we would look at potential decel lanes as well, right turn lanes into the project.
Okay, if you can go to your second slide. This is just area one. Oh, no, it's not the second one. Which is the one that has the overall development? I think it's the very first slide. There we go. That's the one. That one shows the Hickson, and it goes all the way down to Vakin at the south end. Right now, this development that you're going to do first is only to Canal and Mayfield, correct?
Commissioner Lehman, that is correct, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's in the record, that we're only doing a portion here of this whole development.
Yes, Commissioner, everything that's outlined in black for Development Unit 1 is part of that preliminary plat that's before you this evening.
So we'll have another secondary entrance and exit there in your plat 37, and Hickson will have a major intersection as well.
Yes, Commissioner Lehman, that is correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm looking at all the numbers as you're talking.
I'm kind of get familiar with your numbers too, because you have some, you're numbering this, lettering the streets A, B, and C. I like that. I lived in a town that had that called Bakersfield, California. And when they came to the street that was I, they did not want to have an I, what people would confuse with J, so they spelled it E-Y-E. So you might think about that for your naming of your streets.
I'm going to make a note of that right now.
Okay. But you showed the business commercial up here in 31 and 32, and then further down, business commercial will be on the extension road that goes all the way to Adamsville. Is that correct? Is that BC for business commercial?
Is that kind of this area up here and here?
Yes, 26, 27, 34.
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Okay.
And that's part of the PUD development plan.
And there will be quite a bit of distancing caused by the linear park because there's a wash through there, correct?
Commissioner Lehman, the linear park will be about 450 to 500 feet in width to be able to capture all the stormwater that's anticipated to overtop the CAP and the canals, which our site slopes from the southeast to the northwest. So as it'll take that stormwater through the site out to and start go back towards that northwest.
Mr. Chairman, just as a reminder, tonight's agenda item is the preliminary plat only, not going over the entire PUD.
I understand. I just want to make sure we got an overall view of what's going on here. It helps for the public to know that as well. I believe that's all the questions I have at this time. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Very nice presentation, and this looks like a beautiful community, but I am not on board with this at all. I think this is a speeding train, and it's going way faster than I am to catch up and digest it. Just because we can entertain the preliminary plat before we go to final zoning doesn't mean we should. I don't know that all the questions have been asked or had enough time to adequately digest, and for the public to come back for the second reading on the zoning. So from where I sit, this is premature. Lovely as it is and well thought through. That's my position.
Commissioner Pro, any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one small thing, and I congratulate you. I really am impressed with how nice you're planning the amenities that are family-oriented. I think that's really commendable. I wonder, has there ever been any interest expressed or in developing a golf course for that community, for this community?
Commissioner Pruitt, no, we have not explored a golf course at this location.
And so no one has asked you to do that, or you just, there's just no interest?
I can speak to that a little bit, Commissioner. So we, not necessarily in this area, but in our portfolio in Florence in general, we did take a look at that. And there just isn't demand for new golf courses, particularly with the water restrictions in place. Very, very few new golf courses, particularly full 18-hole traditional golf courses are being developed. It's not, there isn't a market for it at this point.
Oh, well, that really hurts me, but
as someone who
Golf
plans on
course.
taking up golf this year, that's my 2024 plan. That would be nice, but
you know, I live in Merrill Ranch, Poston Butte. This time of the year, it's so crowded you can't get a tee time.
oh wow.
And the golf course is the water is they collect the effluent, and that's how they water the golf course. So there's,
Sure.
I don't understand the water issue really, but anyway.
Well, and I think too, Chris Ellis would be much better to speak to this than me, so by no means am I an expert, but I do know the town worked very hard on your designation renewal, and a lot of that effluent is going towards recharge in your designation renewal, so it isn't even available for developers to use for landscape watering. And again, I don't want to get out of my lane. Chris is the expert on that, as well as your water and wastewater resources folks.
Okay.
But that's my understanding. We did have some early conversations about reclaim for that reason.
If there's ever a vote, I vote yes. So
we have had some interesting conversations about a different site we own in Florence, just in case you're interested, about I'll call it more like an executive golf complex concept versus the old, the traditional 18-hole, sort of not a top golf. So don't think that, but a cross between an executive course and a top golf type style.
Sure.
But just the roof tarps aren't there yet.
okay.
Unless we get too far off course here.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Nice pun, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I had a few questions or comments, maybe all combined. Stipulation number 5 talks about all turf and common areas are to be usable and playable. When I looked up the concept of playable and found out what slopes are on typical playgrounds and soccer fields and stuff like that, the maximum that I could find was 2%. And many, if not all, of the turf that I see here is going up slope, which is not playable. And I've never been able to catch a frisbee or catch a ball or play with my kids on a 4-to-1 slope, which is I'm assuming these are. So my suggestion is that we make this turf truly playable, take it into the bottom of the basins where it's flatter, and take some of those areas where you're actually cutting off some of the bottom areas and open it out so that the turf is truly playable.
Chairman Frost, understand your concerns on that. Looking at the slopes, we're at about a 6-to-1 on those areas where some of the turf comes up and connects to the open space, or the amenity areas. So kids can just kind of spill out of, playing on in the tot lots or the play facilities down into the turf area as well too. So it's a connection point to those amenities instead of having to traverse through the gravel, the rocks, and then get to the bottom of the basin. So understand your concerns. There were some areas where we just made sure that it was a slight slope with the 6-to-1. The other areas that don't have the turf are, like you said, the 4-to-1. So understood your concerns on that one.
Yeah, if you would just minimize those areas, because they're hard to maintain, they're hard to water, they never look right because they're on the slope, and they don't fit usable and playable.
Chairman Frost, understand your concern. We'll work with our landscape architect on that and try to fill in some of those gaps where it's more flat.
And some of those areas that I noted on many of those basins that got very narrow, down like 30 feet. And if you look at what other communities are doing in the Southwest, they give minimum dimensions, something like 40 to 50 feet, because when it gets below that, they're not really playable. So I would encourage you to take a second look at those and try to make those areas as large as possible and without narrow areas that would dissuade play. One of the other things that we discussed when we were looking at the PUD and when we discussed this particular unit was a water well reservoir and booster station, which I was told would be up in kind of in the northeastern quadrant of this. I was looking forward to seeing how you're going to aesthetically take care of that, but it's not on this plat. Is it someplace else?
Chairman Frost, yes, the anticipated area for that is within parcel 32. We have not site planned that as part of this preliminary plat application for development unit 1, but it is anticipated to be in 32.
Can you zoom back out to and show me where 32 is, just so I keep that in mind? Oh, it's okay. So you're on the commercial side over there.
Correct. So as 32 starts to narrow down, it becomes unusable, I think, for a commercial operation entity, and that's the area that we look to utilize for that campus.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. On your arterial and major collector streets, you show a 10-foot multi-use path. It looks like there's some sort of a specific surface there. What is your intended surface on that path?
Chairman Frost, for the multi-use path, I anticipate it either being either a decomposed granite, something that would be a compacted DG, something that's more of a soft surface as opposed to concrete.
Okay.
And I think, if I recall correctly, you made a comment about native soil. It would not be native soil.
Okay. And staff, is that meet standards, town standards for a principal arterial to have a multi-use path on one side and a sidewalk on the other?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, at whatever point you would like, I'd like to address that and a number of the other questions and comments that were brought up earlier.
Okay,
kind of a list to go
I'll dance
through.
through all of mine, then I'll turn it over to you. How's that, Larry?
Anytime you want.
Okay, we'll do that. There's a parcel in here numbered 7L. And I have huge concerns with that particular, I'm sorry, I said parcel, I meant tract. Tract 7L. How is our police department going to police that?
Chairman, if you give me a minute to look it up.
Yeah, one of the pages I'm looking at is PP24.
That helps, thank you.
I'm really concerned because you can't see into it except through some very narrow corridors from the streets. And then when I look at the landscape plan, it's filled with trees, which I don't think a police officer can patrol that from his vehicle.
Mr. Chair, I understand your concerns about that. I'm looking at the wall plan that's associated with the tract 7L, and for those lots that back to that, it is a full view fence, so there will be eyes on that area from the residents within that, kind of that are adjacent to and back to that open space area.
And I appreciate that backstop, but that's not really their duty. And I'm very, very concerned when I see things like this because it hinders our police officers being able to do their job as they traverse the area to be able to look into those areas and make sure that everything's, going well there. And I noted when I looked at and these are just kind of general comments, when I looked at your plat, there are a lot of areas where you have what you are calling the active play turf in kind of narrow linear areas, but there are other basins that looks like they would be much more conducive to have playable turf in them because they're more open and more rectangular. So I'd appreciate it if you take a look at those two, because again, it was stated very well that the town was worked very hard to get its designation of assured supply, and I'm all for having turf, but I want it to be playable and usable, and side slopes and narrow venues of turf just doesn't accomplish that. And there are several of these that have turf in them that are just from the get-go, they're just way too narrow to even support any kind of play. Tract 1A at the entrance with Plant Road, where your monuments are. I noted that there is turf there called playable turf, but I don't know of any parent that would let their child play against a state highway. So that starts to look more like monument turf to me, so I would appreciate it if you would think of another treatment there.
Chairman Frost, understand, yes.
And I think that got through most of my comments that I can think of now. There's not a whole lot of comments, but there's a whole lot of impact on basins and things here that I think that plays into that. Larry?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, over several points that were brought up, and I offer clarifications or whatever as I might. First of all, as Vice Chair Adam brought up, you certainly have the option tonight of continuing this. You do not have to take the type of hearing this is not a public hearing, therefore you don't even have to continue it date specific. It could be, based on the adoption of the PUD. But that being said, just keep in mind, a lot of communities do concurrent processing of application types. That's why we added that last stipulation, that even if you were to recommend approval to the council, and as of yesterday, your recommendation on a preliminary plat goes to council, that stipulation is set in such a way that the preliminary plat approval would not go into effect until 30 days after an ordinance adoption, because that 30 days is the appeal period that could occur. So, that's out there on the table if you would so desire. Timing, as I just said, as of yesterday, preliminary plats also go to the town council. Preliminary plats typically, as you're aware, handle preliminary street layouts and lot numbers and lotting, which means when they go to final plat, that the number of lots cannot be increased. They could be decreased depending on engineering as it takes place in more detail, and the primary streets layouts stay the same. Before it goes in front of the council for final plat approval, all engineering plans will have to have been reviewed and approved. So things regarding street cross sections, surface materials, major drainage, development calculations, all of that has to be engineered, reviewed, and approved before we will process a final plat. Fire station, I wanted just to mention, is for more general interest for the commission, that we've initiated an internal group, myself, the fire chief, and the police chief, starting to look at layout of future stations, realizing that the fire stations themselves will be scattered around town. The police stations typically have some type of office space within those, since they are on street patrol and are always in motion. The fire stations, of course, are stationary. Looking at not only this PUD and development as to any desirable locations within it, but all of the ones that have been approved over the last almost 20 years, to see where the most ideal locations are to maintain our insurance rating and response times. So that study has been initiated, and timing I don't have quite yet, but we want to start making some fairly hardcore recommendations as to where stations should ultimately go, and this development will be part of that discussion. Infrastructure responsibilities have been brought up. The developer is responsible for all of the streets and roads within this, as well as, since it's part of the plat, both sides of 287, whatever improvements the ADOT requires, all the things that go with that. And of course, as a part of that, we'll still be collecting development impact fees to go to regional road infrastructure, as part of the transportation streets and roads master plan.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harvey, did you say the developer is responsible for both sides of 287?
The parts that front their development as part of the plat, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Number 6, No, that's my number 6, not yours, sorry. I had to number these in order to keep my head straight. Something we probably could add, and maybe should add for future, bringing up the ability of police to visually patrol. There is a national program. I first worked with it some 40 years ago with the Tempe Police Department called SEPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And that is a program that has a whole litany of recommendations on how to plan and design. And I think maybe adding compliance with SEPTED recommendations as acceptable by our police department might be appropriate stipulation to add and include now from going forward on these types of developments. The last one, there was a question that was brought up by one of our call to the public people regarding is there a development agreement. We did double check with the town attorney on that. One has not been requested by the developer. Arizona law authorizes municipalities to enter in development agreements with property owners if it's mutually agreed upon. Statute does not allow or does not specifically allow cities and towns to initiate development agreements or require them. So in this particular case, there's been no indication by the developer that they desire to move forward with one. And what the development agreements generally do is assign timing and performance standards and things of that nature. And since they are coming forward without one, it basically implies that they are taking on the responsibility of the infrastructure improvements necessary. And that would include water, sewer extensions to access the property, streets and roads improvements, all those things that go with it. So just as a point of clarification. And if I missed anything, let me know. But those were the basics. I just wanted to make sure you had those on the record. Your action tonight could be for approval with or recommendation of approval, stipulation, denial, or continuance to a future date pending the adoption of the PUD. It is your call.
And you actually raised another question in my mind. Our community has had a rash of water problems recently, and with this being on the extreme south of our current water service area, I would imagine that there will be demands here that will be placed on our system to provide flows and pressure into that area. Will the current system, as they start developing prior to the reservoir booster station and well being in place, handle these demands? Has that been modeled?
That would have to be a question for the town engineer. I'm not aware just offhand, but any improvements that would be necessary to serve this development would be their responsibility. I do know for Western Crossings, for example, they were not able to attain pressure with the existing system out there, and that developer has actually extended a larger main. They had a little bit of timing issue as far as getting it across the Grick Canal, but they did get permission. They have gotten the extension through there and to improve on the pressure and access into Western Crossings. The same thing would happen here. They would be responsible for whatever improvements necessary to meet the demand of the.
Yeah, and if I may add just a little bit additional background, that was perfect. I was going to comment on it too, because we are working with that developer and with the designs in the area. So just as a reminder, we did civil master plans with the PUD. We have supplemental reports that go with this preliminary plat that specify all of that modeling with pressures, with facilities. We need that water campus for lot number 1. So that'll be part of the infrastructure plans that Mr. Harmer referenced that would have to come in with our final plats.
Great.
Is that helpful?
Great. And just an aesthetics question, since we deal with aesthetics issues. The reservoir that you're planning, above ground steel, in-ground concrete?
We have no designs yet. I am working on signing the proposals so these guys can do their thing. That's the next. I'm chomping at the bit to get all of that started.
Oh, you're right on a major road, so we're looking for good aesthetics there.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we will have, I actually talked to Chris Ellis when we were here Monday night, I can't remember which night, I've been here all week, about doing sort of like an informal pre-app before we kick off those civil designs. So we'll be very collaborative with the town.
Very good.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions or concerns or come up?
Yeah, I would just like to make a comment, and Mr. Harmer, I really appreciate it. Your answers answer a lot of questions for me. And I just want to be clear, I have no issues with this PUD at all. I have no issues with CD Farms. I have no issues with Bisbee Ranch. I have no issues with what's happening in Attaway. I do have an issue with the town, and I want to know who is looking out at the impact when these all hit together. Attaway, 287, and Adamsville are teensy little rural roads. We have an onslaught of houses and cars coming up, and you have heard from the public. I have asked this since February, and I'm getting no response. The only reason development agreement comes up, and I understand that's not applicable and it's not a legal issue, I would like to see the planning that looks out at all these developments on these little roads. I am the only one who lives here, and so I have a different view. And we hear these in little patches and individual PUDs, which are all wonderful, but no one's just going to drive around their PUD. They're all going to hit these roads, and this is where I have to drive every day. And right now, Attaway and Hunt Highway is a nightmare during rush hour. Right? We fixed Western Crossings. I love having the turn lane. That has alleviated potential accidents right there. But I am very concerned with Bisbee Ranch coming online, CD Farms, and this. And I'm asking the town, are we looking at this as a whole entity? You know, I don't want to have a division between Old Florence and New, but those of us who live in Old Florence, we chose not to be in an HOA. They're all coming our way. I am not against it. I am asking the town to consider the residents who chose to live here and consider our peace of mind, because we're giving that up. And I'm not standing in the way of progress, and this is a beautiful development. But I am asking for some planning so that before we become a Hunt Highway, the proper infrastructure. And thank you for raising the water issue. I live south of the Gila where they shut off all the water all day on a Monday morning. I have heard all the issues at Centennial. I keep hearing that our water infrastructure is so fragile, when a bulldozer goes over it, it breaks our water pipes. That sends alarms in my head. What's going to happen with Florence 287, right? We are in our season. Do you know what happens to a business on Main Street when they have to shut down all day? That is their profit for the month. The county offices have to close. So I'm saying, no, I am not comfortable that we can support this kind of project, all these together. Individual ones, I'm sure you're having great conversations with Chris Salas, but he's also having the same conversation with CD Farms and blah, blah, blah. And he can't keep the water on without all you. So that's my issue here. And I am begging the town to start looking at this holistically. The roads, the water, it's all one, not individual little PUDs. And again, I applaud you. I think this is absolutely beautiful. Just, can we get our act together on the town side and do an equal amount of planning holistically? Thank you.
Commissioner Pro, Mr. Lehman, anything else you'd like to bring up this evening? We good?
No, nothing else, no.
Okay, we're at that point of needing a motion.
I'll make a motion that we table PZ 22-46 till at least after the zoning has gone through council.
If I might, the tabling indicates it would come back to your next immediate agenda. If you wish to continue it, I would use that verbiage.
I'm so deaf and I wasn't reading. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said you need. I would suggest that you act to continue, not table. Robert's rules, tabling brings it back at the next available agenda, and that would be too early.
I'm fine with that, so I'll revise my motion that we continue PZ 22-46.
Is there a second? I think the motion dies for lack of a second. We'll entertain another motion. I'll tell you what, I'll rescind that, and I will second the motion so that we can further discuss this and take it to a vote. Any discussion from? Okay, all in favor of continuing this agenda item, and I believe that contained the verbiage until the council has approved the PUD, is that what you said?
I'd like to put it on the record. I'd like to have a little more discussion, because I know that we're concerned about the growth in the area, and yeah, I've suffered with Hunt Highway up north. I have to deal with that-a-way quite a bit as I head south and do some jobs down that way, and I do drive 287 fairly regularly and look at the intersections and things of that sort. I do come down to the high school and make a loop around on Adamsville, and if we do put Centennial through to Adamsville, and if Hickson goes through to Adamsville, there's going to be a lot of load on all these roads. And at some point, somebody needs to look at the whole shebang. And I'm not sure that we're the ones that can do that study. We need ADOT or somebody to look at an overall study. How do we get that done?
And Commissioner, just to clarify this, we would be continuing this not in anticipation. This is like a whole different agenda item, is discussing holistically in particular the streets and whatnot and traffic control in the area. But this would be continued because we would need more information so that we can move forward with it. But I doubt that we're going to get that holistic of a thing as this moves through.
If we're going to make this a short-term thing, I could see that. But the long term, I don't think we're going to get this solved in the next year. I think it's going to take longer than that, and I don't want to deprive anyone of their rights to use their property as they wish. If they wish to sell their property for this development, that's not our job to stop them from doing that if they're meeting all the codes and all the requirements. So that's my concern. I don't mind continuing it, to the next meeting or maybe a month from now, but we do need to come to a decision here. It's really up to the town council to decide what they want to do. It's not us. We can't, there's nothing here that says they shouldn't be building out there that I've seen. They've done all their due diligence that they should do. So that's kind of where I am, but I would go along with.
I would agree. No one is trying to stop the property owners or the developers doing the right thing. But the time to have the discussion and the planning is now. I did hear that the applicant intends to move forward immediately for final platting. That means they're going to start building immediately. And so, well, it's too late for the negotiation, right? Right now is the time for all of us to get together on the town and look at all this. And should there be any talk or discussion that needs to be had, it's before the train leaves the station. That's all I'm saying. And again, I have voted for this all along, and I'm the one probably most impacted living here. I am for these developments to happen, but not without the proper planning. And as I said, if we can't keep the water on now, and we can't stop contractors from constantly breaking our water lines, I'm not saying they're just breaking by themselves, but someone has to find an answer, because water is a basic right that we have as taxpayers and living in Florence. So just slow it down a little bit and let's have the discussions. There has not been one discussion on this, and as a group, with water and roads, looking at all the PUDs, and I've been asking for this since February, and I have no answers.
Okay, so with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor to continue this agenda item until the town council has acted to approve the PUD. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, what agencies need to come together to get this planning done?
I was going to suggest when it comes time for a call to the commission members that we have an agenda item to look at the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, to see the timing on some of the arterial and other collector streets that will help us move traffic here.
If you may or may not be aware, the council has a special meeting this kind of Monday night to discuss funding and the CIP program.
Okay.
6 o'clock here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Very good.
Great.
I do think we're at a severe disadvantage having not had a town manager for so long, because Mr. Harmer, normally all roads would lead to the town manager, right? He's
Okay.
silent.
That was a good discussion. Thank you very much for coming out and again presenting, doing very well with that presentation, answering a lot of questions. Thank you. Old business. Presentation, this is a public hearing, recommendation of approval and approval with conditions or denial of the modification to lot dimension requirements for the highway business commercial B2 zone. Okay, Maricela?
We brought this item to the commission back in February. We are looking at revising the development code minimum requirements for lot sizes in the B2 highway business commercial zoning. We have found that the minimum lot width and depth has been impeding some development within the town of Florence. And we proposed a change to remove that lot dimension requirement of the 200 feet width and the 100 feet depth, and to change it to not have a minimum lot width and no depth. The current town code, as you saw, is 200 and 100. We found that this requirement is a carryover from earlier revisions of the code, and looking at researching and talking with other towns and cities, they usually don't have a lot dimension requirement for their commercial zones, or they just have at least 100-foot lot width minimum. Looking at this analysis, I think it would help those business B2 areas grow and make plats or the plots for new businesses. Ones that are smaller, that are of this more modern design, they are on smaller lots. And we believe this would help create those business marketplaces and bring in potential commercial users. And we did put out a public notice in the newspaper for this code amendment, and we also had the work session previously. We are looking to get a recommendation, as well as having the public hearing tonight on this change. And if there are any questions, I am free to answer them now.
Commission members, questions, concerns?
Questions on, yeah.
I have a couple, Maricela. When you brought this discussion to us about a month ago, I was intrigued with the concept of the city of Chandler and the town of Gilbert not listing minimum lot dimension requirements, instead maximum building coverage percentages listed. So I actually looked those up, and I was confused with the Gilbert one because it does not talk about that. And so I called one of their planners and talked through that, and I have a copy of those requirements here. What they do is they give a maximum size of use of the standalone building, and then they still have to honor the setbacks required. Mm-hmm. But there is no mention there about percentage of lot coverage. They just give a maximum size. When I looked at the Chandler one, that's where the percentage comes in, and they honor all the height and setback requirements, and then their last thing, which they term intensity of lot use, is no buildings shall occupy more than 55% of the lot area. So that's where I did find that.
Okay.
I'm kind of intrigued with both of those because it gives staff and Planning and Zoning Commission and the council the opportunity to deal with some of these odd-shaped lots that they want to use, but with the dimensions like that, that's too hard and fast. So I'm intrigued with the way that Gilbert and Chandler are doing it, because I think it takes away some of those boundaries that we have hard and fast now for dimensions.
So are you looking to have more of a maximum building coverage percentage? It's because we still require them to meet our setbacks as well as the building heights within the B2 zoning, as well as what's required for parking.
Yeah, they just, the way they have it set up is they don't specify anything about dimensions of the lot. It just talks about the maximum size of the building in Gilbert's case that can go on any given lot and still meet all of the setbacks. So it's kind of self-regulating.
Right.
And then Chandler adds that extra step on it. They have all the setbacks, and they say, but you can only cover 55% of the lot with this building, and you still have to meet all the setbacks and parking requirements as well.
So in a way, we would be moving towards that direction, just minus the lot coverage, because we still require them to meet the setbacks, parking, design, but we just don't have that lot minimum.
And maybe that was the element of this that I was concerned about, because we're given area and bulk requirements, but we didn't have the rest of the story, so to speak, about setbacks and parking and all those other requirements. So that I'm kind of a visual kind of a guy, and when I see 55%, I can envision what that means on a lot, and I can envision the setbacks. When I just see that we're just going to get rid of everything, then it's a little bit more of a concern in my mind. So.
Right. So to clarify, we're not getting rid of everything. We are just getting rid of the minimum lot width and the minimum lot depth. We are still keeping requirements for parking, requirements for setbacks that we have for the B2 area, as well as height requirements, as well as landscaping percentage requirement too.
And should we, as Gilbert did, consider the maximum building size that we could put on one of those lots, or do the Chandler model and say it can only be 55% of the lot size?
I feel like the maximum building size will be, in a way, affected by also how much parking they can have there. Because the building size looks to how much parking you're required to have.
Right. I'm just wondering on some of the potential commercial sites that we have, you could have an awful lot of building there. Mm-hmm. A lot of lot coverage, which would almost seem disproportionate to what they're trying to accomplish. So,
okay.
I appreciated that there were some maximums given by Gilbert and Chandler. I mean, it's pretty liberal with 25,000 feet in neighborhood commercial with Gilbert, and 55% for most of the commercial categories with Chandler. But at least there was something there.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, just to add some more confusion to the whole thing. If you want to go that direction, I think the percentage would be the better way to go for just a variety of reasons. Like you say, if you put a maximum building square footage on, keeping in mind that B2 is our most intensive commercial zone. If we do have a large parcel of B2 and you put a limit of 25,000 square feet, you've just defeated a grocery store. Because they're going to want to go in at 60,000 or 100,000 square foot building, things like that. I think the percentage would be the better way to go if you wanted to, like in a 55%. There's nothing wrong with that, because regardless, they would still have to meet all the requirements, as was said, for parking, stormwater retention, all those types of things, setbacks. Another methodology that is out there that a lot of communities have been adopting over the years, although it's kind of a difficult one at first to kind of grasp what it all, and how it all impacts, is also called FAR, or floor area ratio. And in some communities, the floor area ratio, let's say for a business office zone, like one of our office zonings, might be 100 or 1.00, which means you can have, if you have a 5,000 or a 50,000 square foot lot, you could have 50,000 square feet of building. But you also have to meet parking, certain setbacks, retention, which means the building goes up, goes vertical. The FAR concept is used quite frequently for business offices, for commercial, for industrial, things of that nature, But, that would be a significant change to our code to really get into that level of detail. So, if there's a concern, I would go with a maximum percentage. And 55% is, I think you'll find, will be adequate in these cases.
Well, that was just the research I did in trying to formulate this in my brain to make the numbers work. So, Commission members, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Question, if we went with the 55%, that's of everything, right? That's parking and setbacks? No.
No, we're talking
Whatever's left after you have the parking?
With the building only, they would still have to meet parking requirements, they'd still have to meet setbacks.
Yeah, I understand that. Those are the first priorities, but then the next then you get to the how much of is it the rest of the lot or the whole lot, counting the parking lot? Say it that way. If the parking lot's half of the property, because you want to have a lot of parking for a store or something like that, would the 55% be of what's left after the parking lot or include the parking lot?
No, that would include the entire site, 55%.
Okay.
Again, that's a maximum.
I just want to clarify that. Okay.
Yeah, from a practical standpoint, they may only be able to use 35% of the lot for the building because of the type of use that's proposed would have a greater parking demand that they would have to meet on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pro, any questions or leanings?
Well, I'm listening here, and I don't. One of the issues that I get a lot of feedback from folks, from business folks especially, make things pretty hard here in Florence to go into business, and I don't see any reason why we need to complicate this beyond just eliminating the size. Because what I understand Maricela, when she's explaining this, is that we still restrict, the number of parking, and all the other restrictions are still in place. It's just the minimum width and depth of the lot, correct? So
Correct.
Depending on what kind of business, 55% of the lot or whatever, it just depends on what kind of business it is. So
Right.
I don't know why we need to complicate this beyond, that's my opinion anyway.
Vice Chair?
I guess the only question I have, I tried to look at the zoning map, and I understand on the 79, right, and when we have those kinds of commercial areas, but it looked to me like we have some B2 zoning on Main Street on South End. And so I do have a concern about 3 stories high and how much of the lot it takes up. It's still quasi-neighborhood residential, so I can see and I understand supermarkets, which we want, and if it's out on the 79, but because there's B2 zoning spotty all around town, it's kind of an odd mix.
Yeah. And the height that you just mentioned, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Adam, that's already in the code that they could go to the 3-story. But again, keep in mind that's square footage. They would still have to meet the parking. So each floor would be counted against the parking. So, it ends up being self-regulating on smaller lots. Yeah. I guess that's the way to put it. And you're correct, there are a few scattered around B2s. There's a few B1s out there also. And we've been discussing one of the B1s, for example, you'll be seeing in the near future for conditional use permit that will exemplify what this does. By getting rid of the length and width, it allows them to have a usable lot, but the size of their building is greatly restricted because of the use they want and what the parking and, in this case, the queuing demand is going to be on site.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess just a comment. Gilbert and Chandler were what we are 25 years ago.
Right.
And somehow, as they have weathered this process and came out looking pretty darn good, this is what they come up with to help ensure that, so that everything's not crunched together and looks too commercial. It looks more neighborly and more open. And so I'm hoping we can learn from what they did and why they have done this. And I didn't, the planner that I talked to in Gilbert had only been there less than a year, so didn't have the history, because I was going to ask about the history, but so I just want to throw that out. I know this is a public hearing this evening where So unless there's anything else, we'll open it to the public if anyone would like to comment on this agenda item. Is anyone online, Maricela, that would like?
I do have one hand up online. Oh,
Okay.
2 hands up.
Okay.
Ms. Cox, you're unmuted. Unmute. Oh. Can you hear us?
Oh, yes, hi. I didn't know it was my turn. I was having a conversation. Gracious. So many thoughts on my mind, but this is a disaster waiting to happen. Let me try to get to a little quieter place. It's, I love these all pictorials, all the pretty illustrations, the cartoons until the building starts. It's going to be cheap housing, disposable products from the ground up. Everything is going to collapse.
That's not the agenda item we're referring to, Ms. Cox.
Yeah, we're talking about lot dimensions for business commercials, so that's what this.
Okay, well, either way, there's no room for it. They're taking a bigger bite that they could chew, and they're all trying to get us for taxes and everything else. I oppose any of this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Cox. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And again, just to remind our online folks, we are discussing an agenda item. The public hearing is about modification to lot dimension requirements for highway business commercial. So, Ms. Ramirez, did you want to comment on that?
You're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. So it's been a long day for me too, and my brain is almost mushed by now, but I agree we need to do lots of things to kind of be flexible with getting businesses in here. And I think no matter what, the parking lots are always a really big deal. So whatever we do, let's just not ignore the need for adequate parking. So many accidents happen in parking lots, and some of the parking lots we have around here are really, really, really tiny. You know, as long as we're fair and these businesses can come in and have adequate, safe space on the lot for their customers, for vehicles and things like that, I'm all for that. Let's make some things a little bit more lenient for the residents too. I'm all for that. So, but just, you know, parking and safety on these lots are utmost importance too. So that's all I wanted to say about that. We need to do what we can to bring businesses here.
We appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. With that, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this evening? And I think Maricel, that's everyone online, right?
We have 2 more online.
Oh, 2 more online, okay.
Yes.
Just please be sure to state your name and you will have 3 minutes.
Mr. Burt? Can you hear
Hi,
me?
I would like to know, you guys talked about looking at the town in an overall sense. I agree with that perspective. In regards to the lot sizes, I agree to the 55% ratio. I do commercial infrastructure maintenance. So I work on commercial buildings and sites all the time. That's actually what I do for a living. Where do you propose that the water is going to come from for commercial sites? Are there restrictions for that as well? And then where is the runoff from those sites going? And then how is that spillage to be contained? So that's more or less what my questions are.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Maricel, is anyone else online?
Yes. Mr. Eaton, you're up.
Mr. Eaton.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman and commission members. Good job as usual. Sure appreciate you guys. So I have seen this firsthand that the lot sizes has restricted some expansion and some expansion of even possibly expanding the historic district a little farther down Main Street. I certainly agree with it. And Chairman Frost, I appreciate once again your deep research that you always put into these. And it seems like once we release completely to unlimited, it adds a little bit more subjectivity to it. And I think by using the 55%, and I certainly agree that there's no use reinventing the wheel. If it's been done and looking at and proven, I think we can look at it. But I have to agree also with Mr. Harmon when he says it. I think we'd go with the 55%. I support this wholly, and I appreciate the input.
Thank you for your comments. And is that everybody? Marty, still online?
We have online, yes, but we have one here.
One more.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commission. I just wanted to speak tonight and just remind everybody kind of the mess that we have on 79 right now. When you try to leave Ruggles Street at 79, there are cars lined on both sides of the road. There's landscaping that's impeding the view of traffic coming down 79, and I just want everybody to remember that, you know, what's decided does pertain to the future, because when that dental office was put in, spaces were cut to make it convenient for that dental office. I think they were supposed to have 26 parking spots, and they went with half, and now the staff park on the side road next to homes and along the side, and there's just not enough room for that business that was there. It's a beautiful business, we need it, but it's not enough room and parking for what is there right now. So I do agree with the 55%. I think that we need to stay firm on that and not budge on a lot, because parking in this town is a huge issue on and off of Main Street, and 79 is no better. It's a cluster to get into the dollar store. It's a cluster to get into Sonic. It's dangerous to leave Taco Bell. It's dangerous to get off of Ruggles by Mount Athos and the dental office. So I just wanted to speak on that tonight and say it is a very important matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I think that's everyone now, right? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other last comments, concerns? And Larry Monticello, just to make this so that everything's good, should we continue this so that you can bring us back something that we can truly get behind, or how do we want to do this?
I think in this case, there's two ways that we could look at it, and it just basically tonight I see a couple of choices. One is you could move to recommend to the council the change to the zoning code or the development code to remove the lot width and depth requirements, but to include a maximum percentage of building coverage. Or you could continue it for us to bring it back in that form, and we would re-advertise it, since there's a little bit of a change in the fact base, because we're going from minimum dimensions to a percent coverage is a bit of a change. So it might be provident just to re-advertise it and do it that way, and that way it would come back to you. So I think it's your choice on which way you'd like to proceed, keeping in mind that it still would go to the council as a public hearing, and even if your recommendation tonight were to proceed with that stipulation of 55%, that's what they would hear, because that's the way you would have recommended it. So it's kind of your call on what you'd like to do tonight.
Okay, I don't know if this is proper or not, but I've been in trouble for other things. Council members, is there a better way that you'd like to see this? Should we bring it back to us and continue it so that you get a full package, or is there a better way that you would like to deal with this when it comes your way?
It's whatever you guys decide.
Okay.
We put our trust in you, and we know that you guys make the best decision up there, so it's whatever you guys decide.
Okay. Well, let's make a motion then. Okay. I'll make a motion that we continue this and get the final language for consideration, and then just so that we have the whole enchilada there when you submit that back, could you give us the setbacks and parking requirements and stuff like that too? So not only us, but anybody else that sees this, because there's a lot of concern about parking. We'll see what those numbers are and maybe be able to envision that a little bit better.
Can I just add something? So I did the research on the other towns and everything, and I looked for the lot dimensions and the width and everything, but I do not know the parking requirements for all the towns. I do know that Marana does not have a parking requirement, so I could just
And I meant the
look
parking
into
for
that.
us, just so that people will understand what it is for us that's being proposed here. No, thank you. I appreciate that. So with that motion, and I hope that was clear enough, that motion to continue to get the final
I know that from
wording.
following the minutes, and we do this, and we say whatever the chair said. Could you repeat
Yes,
that
let's
so
just-
we get that
more.
exact, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we continue this to give staff the opportunity to put final language together for us to consider.
I'll second.
Been motioned by the chair and seconded by the vice chair. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Chairman, since it was not date specific and it, not knowing how long it'll take us to do this, we will re-advertise this as a new public hearing.
Okay.
So you're aware.
That's fair. Okay, with that, we'll move to item number 8, Director's Report, Regional Multimodal Transportation Study, election of vice chair, vice chair schedule for the April agenda, and status of the PUDs. And Larry and Marcel, you both going to do this?
I'll be handling these, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman. The first one, just wanted to make you aware that MAG, and with cooperation from ADOT, has initiated a multimodal transportation study that encompasses the vast majority of Santan Valley and includes the town of Florence, those areas within our planning area, and some of the areas actually already in the town limits. So it comes down to, I think, at least the river bottom. I'd have to look at the layout again. I met with the MAG representative earlier this week and kind of went over some of the discussions. Multimodal, of course, is going to be getting into a lot of things besides just streets and roads, potentials that are in those areas. How long, timing, how long it'll take. At this point, as I said, I was just contacted this week. They're just getting started with this. I'll be representing the town, at least for a short period of time. And then someone else will be inheriting that, but we will be involved in this planning effort being conducted by MAG.
And Larry, just so that our listening audience understands, could you give some examples of multimodals, since that's not a term that's tossed around
it could be different forms of mass transit. It could be ride-sharing programs. It could be expansion of our, I just blanked on it, our CART system, our shared rides, all types of different things, as well as the potential of extensive bicycle lanes on, recommendations. It covers all aspects, pretty much everything except for air travel. But it may even get into a discussion on rail. We do have a lot of rail available to us through this area, although it's still active rail, so, commerce type active rail. So that likelihood is probably slim, but nonetheless, it does exist and I presume is going to be studied. I don't have the details of the scope of work on the whole thing yet, but we'll keep you informed.
Very good, thank you.
The election of chair, just to let you know, on your next agenda, your election of chair and vice chair will likely be on that agenda. There are indeed alternates, planning commission members, and I'm presuming that one would be seated before your next meeting. Status of PUDs, this one is going to be of interest to everybody. We're preparing, I'm working with the town attorney and the acting town manager right now, putting together a summary presentation of what the number of PUDs that we have already. I mean, the town started adopting PUDs back in 2005. And just because they haven't been constructed doesn't mean they went away. We have encumbered almost 29 square miles of the town with PUDs. So we're putting together a summary that kind of gives everybody a better idea of the total impact that all of these might have. Keeping in mind that, if somebody were to ask me to project what's the build out going to be of all of these, you're not going to see it before the year 2050. I mean, at the earliest probably, just because the timing it takes to get things up and running. You've seen Anthem was approved in '05, and it's still only a percentage built. Today, almost 20 years later. So the other thing will be part of this is how many of them have development agreements attached to them. If they are there timelines for expiration? Because if they expire, that does provide an opening for the town to, renegotiate them. Things of that nature. There'll be a breakdown on the total number of acres, the total number of projected lots. And based on our 2020 census, we can give you a projected population that would result from these PUDs. Also, included in this will be a discussion on entitlement versus vesting. In other words, getting into the details of what is called an entitle or land use entitlement that allows a project to propose itself, as versus when when the town would not be in a position to cut them off, basically. Vesting is when there's significant monetary investment into a project, and court law, or must be late already. My brain just went dead. Case law has already heard a lot of challenges on the difference between entitlements and vesting. And so working with the attorney, we want to bring forth a little bit of an educational as to the definitions and what that means on these developments. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're working on this because it also obviously would impact the future of the town as it grows, transportation issues, infrastructure, wet infrastructure issues, where the town has control over the wet infrastructure versus where it's under EPCOR, things of that nature. So we're working on that. It will likely either be a presentation to council during a regular session, or it might be part of a work session. That hasn't been determined yet, but I think it's very important for everybody to understand the impacts of everything that's already on the books.
And do you have a timeline on that?
Not at this point. I would guess at this, based on, we're into the budget season, and therefore the biggest priority the council's doing on their work sessions right now is going to be budgetary oriented. We do have some other issues, including the transportation ones that are in the queue to have joint work sessions with the commission. If we do it as a brief council presentation, I would be guessing that it's going to be May.
Thank you. Okay. Call to the commission. Mr. Lehman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Road to Country Thunder's coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll have a lot of transportation going on around town. So we'll look forward to that. I'm looking forward to it too.
Thank you.
I guess I kind of feel obligated. I would just like to say that I feel very badly about losing Commissioner Capilongo tonight. No pointing fingers, right, wrong, or indifferent. I know that he served this commission well, and he really cared, and he put a lot of work into it. And I just want to acknowledge that we're going to miss him. I will.
And I will second that and add the descriptor of a. I had it on. I think Larry, you rubbed off on me. Now I can't remember the right word, because he was very passionate, and we appreciate that. He was very dedicated in being here. Larry, I think in one of the previous meetings we heard something that the town was putting together a water and wastewater master plan. And if that's the case, do you know what the timeline is on that? And can you put that on the agenda for us to see it when it gets done?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a timeline. I will contact the town engineer and get some information for you.
With that?
Nothing.
Okay.
I second that with regarding Fred Capilano. I thought he he was dedicated to serving the town of Florence, and feel bad that he's left.
With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by the vice chair and a second by Commissioner Pro. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.